Jordan Peterson and Robert Sapolsky are two of the most famous contemporary university professors. Peterson's 12 Rules for Life has sold over 5 million copies all over the world, and the biblical lectures have gathered tens of millions of views. While Sapolsky's lectures on Stanford's YouTube channel have tens of millions of views as well. Since their content is free and the quality of the lessons is excellent, they managed to get the attention of a lot of people. The topics they talk about share some similarities, since they both talk about behavior. Well, it's not like I have to talk about these two, since you surely already know them, and I could go on for hours, given their importance and their work. So I'll start with my first observation, Sapolsky's idea of genetics maximization. In the first two lessons of Sapolsky's human behavioral biology course, he states that animals act in the way which genetics favors them the most. Animals share 50% of their genome with their brothers, so they are willing to share companions. Based on species, there are animals like tournament animals, very aggressive animals where 95% of the population is derived from 5% of males, and animals which tend more to nurse their babies and teach them. Sapolsky places humans in the middle, both aggressive and caring for their children. These tournament species are the prime example of the genetic maximization and competition animals struggle against, which are source of violence and sometimes even infanticide, to stop the mother from nursing and instead being able to have another child. But it is also a source of cooperativeness to survive together, creating a strategy known as the tit-for-tat strategy, based on the concept of altruism. Not only that, but the individuals who are more cooperative tend to emerge more than the ones who aren't as cooperative. Here we can see the difference between tournament and normal species. Jordan Peterson, in his third lecture, stated that animals have lived in social hierarchies since the time of lobsters, around 300 million years ago, and so it is deeply embedded in our structure of being. As example, he states that the way to make a person angry the most is by making him remember that he is lower than him in this social hierarchy. Female humans, like many other animals, but unlike chimpanzees, have selection rates to choose whether or not to have sex with a male or not, and therefore have an offspring. As a result, we have 2 times more female ancestors than male ancestors. Half the males didn't manage to have an offspring in their lifetime, whereas many males were polygamous and had more than one offspring for more than one wife. To provide another example for this, he says that when a man rejects a woman or a woman rejects a man, the one who gets rejected is psychologically hurt, because rejecting a person is the same as rejecting their offspring and their genetics. Jordan Peterson compares 3 different religions: the Egyptian, the Sumerian and the Christian. In all of these religions, the ones at the top of the social structure are often represented with eyes, like in Marduk and biblically accurate angels, or with an animal well known for its sight, like in the case of Horus, represented by an eagle. In the beginning of Genesis, God creates the universe out of complete chaos. And so did Marduk. He killed the dragon of chaos, the dragon being the ultimate symbol of fear and chaos. The recurring theme in these stories is that the ones who observe reality the most are at the top of the social and spiritual hierarchy. An idea which was shared by Descartes, saying that the doubt is the source of any knowledge, Einstein stating that he's not smarter than any other individual, but he's simply more curious, and ultimately Piaget with his theory of constructivism in learning. At the end of the day, it comes down to one question. Why is transmitting genetics to the next generation so important? To answer that question, I will make the example of Jesus. Jordan Peterson, in his biblical lecture, referred to the line of Genesis, Noah was perfect in his times, meaning that the descendants of Jesus have reproduced in order to find the perfect man for all times, which was ultimately Jesus. Mainly what lacked to the good people of the Bible, like Job, was that he could only save himself. People tend to trust themselves more than others, which is a natural thing to do, based on survival, since you can't trust everyone fully. Behavior is therefore based on the trust one person puts into humanity. It can be seen in the change of behavior of God, from the universal flood, with the humans inhabiting the earth, immersed in every kind of vice and doing all sorts of sins, or the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, to the savings of Moses and the Jews in the Egyptian lands, and the promise of the promised land with milk and honey. So, what made Jesus a perfect man? To put it short, Jesus did not commit any kind of sin, and had absolute faith in human goodness. As we know, as Kierkegaard criticized, the message had been misinterpreted by the Christian Church. Although, I have to say, I find it fact that Kierkegaard's one is a task that only he has done in 1800s years of Christian history false, since many nobles have lived following the true Christian doctrine. Furthermore, Heidegger had developed the difference between authentic and inauthentic life, difference given by recognizing that the fact that one day we will die is certain, and this provokes a sense of anxiety and angst that can only be fought. It is a vision similar to Zeno's stoicism. In the first half of the 20th century, Carl Jung studied it from a psychological point of view. He studied it with Freud. In the first half of the 20th century, Carl Jung studied it from a psychological point of view, with Freud, but he later detached his thinking, studied Christian and alchemical symbolism. Carl Jung subdivided the unconscious from personal unconscious, derived from the experiences from the descendants, and the collective unconscious, containing the archetypes. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of archetypes, but the main four are the self, the shadow, the persona, and the animo and animus. The self is the one which merges all the four archetypes. By doing such actions, Jesus considered that genetics didn't matter as much as the pursuit of the perfect idea of genetics, given by him. To be considered as a brother didn't mean having similar genetics, but rather having the same pursuit of genetics. Inspiring people with the death and resurrection, his sacrifice for whole humanity, people take actions and develop the maximum potential of their genetics. With this idea and this knowledge in mind, Jesus decided to take action and spread his positive message to men. But if Jesus was perfect, had perfect genetics, which made him a genius, why did he rather not reproduce and spread them like his ancestors did? Why did Jesus not have any descendants? Proprio il cliffhanger proprio. Well, this is because Jesus was able to transmit the universal message of how to behave in the world through his life lived in perfection. And the four evangelists, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, with the Gospels. Jesus deemed as unnecessary developing his message furthermore, as he had already laid the fundamentals for his doctrine to develop the full genetic potential. In the Acts of the Apostles, his disciples spread his message furthermore in order to save more people spiritually, and the Christian religion had spread as such. Since a person shares 50% of his genes with his brothers, one would normally sacrifice himself to save two brothers. But since Jesus believed that having his same ideals and not sinning was enough to be considered as a brother, and that everyone could follow such path, he decided to sacrifice himself for the whole humanity, which is considered as his potential brotherhood. With this video, one might ask the following question: is religion an improvement of genetics? My answer will be the following. Religion, especially Christian religion, can be a better way of spreading ideals rather than genetics. It is important, however, to not only spread the positive message, but also follow it as much as possible, since Jesus criticized the Pharisees in the Gospels for not following their teachings. Jordan Peterson, in his book 12 Rules for Life, has stated that these rules are a target to reach, a very difficult target, which not even he could accomplish in every kind of situation. These rules are suggestions to orient people in the right way as much as possible, and one man should miss such a target the least possible, to sin the least possible. As researchers state, the word sin is derived from a Greek word which means miss the mark.